Listening to the recorded documentation of the quarterly pressure differential audit conducted within Sector B intake array of the mechanical wing. The intake chamber is rectangular in proportion, extending approximately 12 metres in length and 6 metres in width. Ceiling panels are suspended at a moderate height, finished in matte off-white composite to reduce glare from the overhead lighting. The floor consists of sealed concrete. The surface has been treated with a non-reflective coating designed to resist moisture absorption and reduce slip risk during inspection procedures. At this, the surface is dry. The primary filtration units are positioned along the northern wall. Each unit is housed within a cylindrical steel casing, brushed to a low sheen. Under direct light, faint linear grain patterns are visible along the outer shell of each housing. No irregularities are noted in the surface finish. The amount within the chamber is consistent with standard operational output. Low mechanical hum is present, produced by the intake pre-pumps located one level below the inspection platform. The hum remains. There are no audible fluctuations. Inspection begins with visual confirmation of inflow. Gauge 1 is mounted at a level on the primary intake conduit, basically approximately 10 centimeters in diameter, with black numerical markings against a white background. The needle rests between 42 and 43. Previous quarter baseline readings were at 43 psi, so the current reading is within acceptable variance. Light from the overhead panel creates a narrow reflection across the glass gauge cover. The reflection moves slightly as the inspector adjusts. The needle remains stable. Proceeding to gauge A. Gauge A2 measures pre-filter chamber pressure. The reading indicates 38 psi. Baselines from prior audits recorded 39 psi. Variance of 1 psi is noted. The surface of the intake conduit shows minor condensation along the lower seam. Droplet formation is no active leakage is. The condensation pattern remains uniform across the seam line. The inspector pauses briefly to listen. Pump hum changes as expected. Cavitation noise is detected. Proceeding to different measurements. Check pressure differentials. Inflow is at 40. Chamber is at 30 psi. Calculated differential 4 psi. Acceptable differential change is 6 psi. Current reading is stable and within tolerance. A soft airflow is perceptible at ankle height, produced by adjacent ventilator return ducts. Flow is mild and consistent. Moving to filtration unit 1 membrane housing, we can see the housing is secured by 6 evenly spaced steel latches. Each latch is inspected for alignment and tension integrity. All latches appear flush against their relevant casing. Rust accumulation at hinge points. Surface finish remains intact. Membrane pressure reading sits at 35. Membrane exit reading 4 psi. Internal differential is 1 psi. Membrane efficiency is consistent with expected flow resistance at this cycle stage. Faint vibration is felt when placing a hand lightly against the casing. The vibration is steady and no irregular pulse patterns are detected. Room lighting remains constant. Flickers are observed. Proceeding to filtration unit 2. Flow to unit 2 sits at 41 psi. Pre-membrane reading 7 psi. Post-membrane 6 psi. Differential remains stable. Sound environment does not change between. Moving along the inspection platform, metal grating beneath footfalls produce a muted resonance. The resonance fades quickly. Now on to Unit 3, inspection. Flow reading sits at 42. Pre-filter chamber sits at 30 psi. Post-filter chamber is at 38. The differential is 3. Lower threshold of acceptable range. It's within tolerance. The inspector notes slight mineral residue along the outer ring of the membrane housing flap. Residue is pale in colour and uniform in distribution. No scaling build-up beyond the surface layer. Scheduled cleaning remains set for the next. No immediate action. A clipboard rests against the stainless workbench near the eastern wall. The paper edges are aligned evenly, no curve. Returning to the main intake conduit. Secondary bypass valve is visually inspected. Valve handle orientation remains in intake position. Seal indicator remains unbroken. Pressure reading at bypass test port 0. Bypass is inactive as expected. Ambient humidity reading from wall-mounted hygrometer indicates 48% relative. Previous quarter reading 50%. Variance is minimal. There is a faint metallic scent common to enclosed mechanical environments. Scent does not intensify. Proceeding now to sediment trap chamber. The sediment trap housing includes a clear observation panel. Panel is free from cracks. Light scratches are present along lower edges, consistent with routine. Sediment accumulation appears light. Layer depth approximately 0.8. Maximum threshold before flush is 5 centimeters. The flush is required at this interval. A thin line of shadow runs along the floor where the filtration units meet the wall. Shadow remains unchanged as inspection continues. Intake pre-pump vibration is checked via floor contact. The vibration remains constant. No harmonic oscillation is detected. Pressure log entries are recorded. Inflow pressure is stable between 1 and 43 psi across stable 3 to 4 psi. Membrane resistance, pressure spikes, none. Audible anomalies. Proceeding to pressure spike simulation. Manual valve is partially adjusted to simulate temporary restrictions. Inflow reading rises to 45 psi briefly. Pre-filter chamber adjust. Differential increases to 4 psi. Response time 2.3 seconds. Systems return to baseline upon valve normalization. Response is within acceptable parameters. The inspector restores valve standard intake position. Testing range. Audible change. Light reflects off the brushed steel surface of Unit 1 in a narrow vertical band. The reflection remains steady. The inspection concludes with a final ambient listening interval. Pump hum. Flow. Fluctuation in gauge needles. Negative. The moon remains stable. Final log entry. Sector B intake array is operating within standard pressure differential. No maintenance escalation is required. Membrane cleaning scheduled for next cycle. Sediment trap below threshold. Bypass inactive. Humidity stable, and the inspection complete. Beyond the primary intake array, a secondary manifold extends along the western wall of Sector B. The manifold distributes filtered water toward 3 internal circulation branches. The piping is mounted approximately 1 metre above floor level and is supported at equal intervals by steel bracket assemblies anchored into the concrete wall. Each bracket is secured with 2 expansion bolts. Bolt heads are flush and show no surface corrosion. A narrow inspection light strip runs parallel to the manifold, recessed slightly into the ceiling channel above. The light temperature is cool and consistent, seeing minimal shadow distortions along the pipe surface. The first branch line is labelled B1 circulation feed. The external surface temperature of the pipe is measured using a contact thermometer. Surface reading 14.8 degrees Celsius. Baseline operational temperature range is between 14 and 16 degrees Celsius. Heating remains within tolerance. There is no audible turbulence within the branch line. The inspector places a hand lightly against the pipe to confirm vibration consistency. The vibration amplitude is low and steady, consistent with nominal flow velocity. Now proceeding to branch B2. Branch B2 includes an inline flow meter positioned at mid-height. The transparent flow window reveals steady movement with no gap segmentation. Flow rate displays at a steady 62 litres per minute. The previous quarter reading was 60 litres per minute. Variance is plus 2 litres per minute. this variance remains within acceptable thresholds. The ambient mechanical hum continues unchanged. Vibration remains constant beneath the grating. And at the third branch, B3 return channel, we see it routing filtered water toward the thermal exchange loop, which is located 2 sections east of the intake chamber. The return pipe is insulated with grey composite wrap, secured by evenly spaced fastening bands. Band is inspected visually for tightness. Loosening is detected. Small maintenance hatch for easy access is located at knee height beneath the return. The hatch door is opened slowly. Inside the cavity, the pressure stabilization buffer tank is visible. The tank exterior shows uniform paint finished with no blistering. The pressure gauge on the buffer tank reads 40 psi. Buffer tank operating range should be between 38 and 42 psi. Its reading is stable. Faint echo is noticeable inside the cavity when the hatch remains open. The echo is minimal and does not alter overall room acoustics. The hatch is closed securely. Proceeding towards the junction where filtration output meets the thermal regulation feed, we see the junction is reinforced with a triple seal flange assembly. Each seal ring is engaged and then examined for visible compression irregularities. The seal surfaces appear evenly compressed. The residue is present. A thin line of light reflects along the flange circumference, remaining unbroken. No leakage is detected. At the eastern end of the intake chamber, a vertical riser pipe extends upward through the ceiling panel into the level above. The riser is labelled Auxiliary Distribution Line B Aux. The riser base joint is inspected. Fork markings remain in alignment. No lateral shift detected. The riser produces a faint resonance when touched lightly, consistent with upward flow momentum. Resonance dissipates immediately upon release. Inspector pauses for 10 seconds to observe gauge behaviour across the array. Inflow 42 psi. Pre-filter 38 psi. Post-filter 36 psi. No movement beyond normal micro fluctuation. Proceeding to the pre-intake sediment bypass valve assembly. Although bypass remains inactive, the assembly includes a manual override wheel. The wheel rotates smoothly within 5 degrees of test movement. No stiffness detected. The wheel is returned to the neutral locked position. No pressure disturbance occurs during the test movement. The intake floor drain is located beneath Unit 2. Grate is removed for inspection, and the drain channel interior appears clear and unobstructed. Minor dust accumulation is present, but there's no sediment buildup. The grate is reseated flush with the floor. A thin shadow line returns beneath the unit casing as light resumes its previous reflection angle. Ambient humidity remains at 48%. Air temperature reading is 18.6 degrees Celsius. Condensation change along lower conduit seam. Pump hum remains steady in frequency and amplitude. No cyclical variation. Proceeding to upstream valve housing adjacent to the southern wall, we can see the valve housing exterior temperature sits at 15.1 degrees Celsius. Data window confirms full open alignment. The indicator paint, it's intact. Seal discoloration. Though a slight metallic reverberation is audible when knuckles lightly tap the housing surface. The reverberation fades within 1 second. There is no hollow resonance beyond expected structural echo, so inspection continues to flow regulator chamber. The regulator dial remains set at a calibrated index mark of 3.7. Adjustment screws, no displacement is shown. Seal cap remains intact. Closed. The inspector stands momentarily at the centre of the intake array. From this position, all primary units are visible in peripheral alignment. The overhead lighting produces consistent linear reflections across each cylindrical housing. Flicker, no audible relay clicks, no intermittent vibration. Chamber remains mechanically stable. The inspector remains positioned at the centre of the intake chamber. No adjustments need to be made. They can continue their steady indication. Their inflow pressure holds between 41 and 42 psi. Pre-filter chamber remains at 38 psi. Post-filter output remains 6 psi. Needle movement is minimal, shifting no more than a fraction within the calibrated markings. There is no audible fluctuation in pump rhythm, and the mechanical hum remains even. Sound is low and constant, a tonal variation. A faint airflow continues at ankle height from the return duct along the western wall. Flow does not change in intensity. The overhead light panels emit a stable, cool illumination. The reflection across the curved steel housing remains aligned and uninterrupted. The inspector waits for a full 60-second observation interval. No anomalies occur. During the interval, the sediment trap window remains clear, though there is a light scratch along the lower edge of the observation panel. It does not distort visibility. Sediment depth remains unchanged. Second 60-second interval is observed. Acoustics remain constant. Step echoes are introduced. External doors open. Distant relay clicks are detected. It remains at 48%. Air temperature holds at 18.6 degrees Celsius. The contact thermometer is placed briefly against the primary intake conduit once more. Surface temperature reads 14.9 degrees. This reading aligns with earlier measurements. The inspector moves slowly towards Unit 1 and places a hand lightly against the casing. The vibration amplitude remains low and pulse irregularity is felt. The same test is repeated at Unit 2. Vibrations remain consistent. At Unit 3, no variation detected. The floor grating produces a soft, muted tone when weight is shifted slightly. The tone fades immediately. The inspector pauses for observation. Half a minute passes. The gauges remain steady. Further 30 seconds pass. Still no change. The bypass indicator remains sealed. Manual override wheel remains aligned in neutral position. The flange assembly at the junction remains dry. No condensation increase is visible. The buffer tank gauge remains at 40 psi. The needle does not work. The hatch panel remains flush with the wall surface. No air vibration is detectable at the seam. A final listening interval is conducted. 1 minute. The hum of the pre-pumps below remain identical frequency. Rising pitch, no deceleration, no. Air movement remains imperceptibly steady. The inspector records final notations on the clipboard. The paper surface remains flat. The pen pressure leaves uniform. Timestamp 2:27 hours. System condition is stable. Pressure differential maintained within tolerance band. Membrane resistance consistent. Thermal integration normal. Branch flow rate acceptable variance. Drainage integrity clear. Power dependent functions undisturbed. The clipboard is returned to its position on the stainless steel work. The inspector remains still for a final observation window. Seconds. The chamber does not alter. The reflection of light across the steel housings remain unchanged. The hum continues without interruption. The gauges rest within calibrated tolerance. It's cool and steady. No alerts trigger. No corrective action is required. The water filtration pressure differential audit for Sector B intake array is now. The system remains in quiet operation. The chamber remains stable. The system remains within calibrated parameters. All gauges rest inside their designated tolerance bands. Airflow continues without variation. Pressure remains stable. Temperature remains consistent. Humidity remains unchanged. Alerts are active. No corrective adjustments are required. Chamber remains insulated and mechanically contained. The equipment continues operating in a balanced state. This concludes the current verification interval. The system remains in quiet operation.